Hi, Shannon. Good morning. Welcome, Lakia, Ezekiel. Good morning to all. I hope that everybody is doing fine, that you're still COVID free, and that you're healthy otherwise. Can everybody hear me clearly? If you can hear me clearly, give me some feedback, let me know. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a few things we want to cover today before I go into anything. I want to remind you of the protocol that we have set for our past couple classes. Please ensure that you follow that protocol, which includes turning off your mic if you are not speaking to the class so that your environmental noises do not affect us. Alphonsus is here with us today. I should say as usual. Good morning, Alphonsus. All right, so it looks like we can start soon. Most persons are already here. Just giving 1 or 2 minutes so that other persons can show up before we start. I trust that persons were able to do the various quizzes from the previous weeks that you have done, the quizzes and the assignments. We had one issue. Some persons mentioned the fact that some of their stuff had not been corrected. There was a technical issue that had to be sorted out. That technical issue was preventing us from doing the correction and sending your grades to you. But that has been sorted out. So things should be all right going forward.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
I plan to have all the the grading done, although it's not much. Some people we still have a lot of students to submit. But I look at the 3 or 4 I think that is there. I looked at them already. Really, I worked out all the exercises a couple of weeks ago. So it's easy now to take off my comments, add and subtract. So I could have that done by midday, 2 o'clock tomorrow. So please submit. Let's say I give you today and up to, let's say, midday tomorrow, God's willing, send them in so everybody, we could bring it up to speed. Fair enough?
Yeah, I guess that's good. There are quite a few. When I browse through the activity on the WASO online site, I realized that there is a small section of the class that is usually participating and doing the quizzes and so on. I'm not sure why the other persons are not participating. I know that some persons, the way they study is to leave everything for close to the exam. That's when they want to do everything. I'm not sure if that's what's going on. I also know that some of the students are under pressure in terms of what's going on right now.
The lockdown and
the lockdown.
The task they have.
And some of them are actually working more than they usually do. Because of the lockdown, because people are home, they tend to use the demand, I would think, is higher because people are home the entire day. So I'm guessing that is affecting it as well. But students, if there is any, if you're having any issues with the platform or with actually getting to the quiz and assessments, it is important for you to let us know so that we can do something about it. We can assist you. Okay. So moving forward, let's see how much we can do, and let's see in terms of submission the quizzes, how many more we can get submitted before tomorrow afternoon. Okay, yeah, somebody's saying their workload is multiplied. So they're essential workers and they may be working some strange hours right now. So for today's class, I want to go through some of the content that that is covered under administration and management. Well, I looked at administration and management. Now, as I said in a previous class, I am not attempting to go through okay, Ezekiel, we will go through that maybe later in this class, or if not, we will go through that with you individually. All right. Okay. As I was saying, I am not going to try to go through every single detail of what is on the site. I am going to point out a few things that I think are key, not that the other things are not important, but things that I think are extremely important for you to understand or for you to remember. I'm going to point them out. The presentation that I am going to do may contain information that is not currently on the site. I am not going to go through GIS and maps, but I want to point out that in terms of maps, it's important for you to know the types of maps that are used in the distribution system, just the types, and the scale used for the different types of maps. These are two things that you should try to remember. GIS, you need to know what GIS stands for. You should have an understanding of how it's used in the distribution system. These two topics tend to be covered more heavily in the higher levels of certifications, level 3 and 4. Based on my experience, this is when we have seen more questions on maps and on GIS and so on things like SCADA. This is where you get most of these questions. So for that reason, I am not spending too much time on it, but you need to know the learn or well memorize the things that I mentioned, so that if questions come up on that, you're able to answer them. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. I'm going to go to my little presentation. Okay. All right, so that's our 11th class. And we winding down, we coming closer to the end of this series of classes and this preparation for your certification exam. Coming closer to it. Okay, so we're looking at administration and management. So I want to do three things: discuss administration, discuss management, and then explore the operator's role in both. Because I am certain that many of you as operators don't see yourselves as administrators or managers. But there are tasks that are involved in both of these that you are very important for, that you fulfill. And so I want to look at what these two entail, and then we will look at, as we look at what they entail, we're going to consider some of the things that operators are doing in this regard. Okay, so each of these can be broken down. So what I have done, I have a diagram here that shows you, and you will see in a bit. So it shows you a breakdown of some of the components of administration and management. And they are not necessarily in order: financial management, record keeping, maintenance management, planning, and public relations. So these are some of the key areas that would come under this topic. And we're going to look at some of them, most of them in turn. I can also add personnel management, which is human resource management. Um, but managers also have to do some aspect of that because you have various objectives and goals that you want to achieve in a distribution system. And one of the functions of management is to assign various persons to the various tasks that would help you achieve these goals. So you have to manage the personnel that you have, put the best persons to the tasks that are available. So you want to make sure you send the right people to do the right things. You don't want to send the accountant in the field to repair pipes. He's going to make a mess. So personnel management is very important. I know I didn't put it there, but it's important. So let's look at planning. So planning is very, 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 very important. I know Caribbean people like putting a lot of these adjectives they are in front of things, you know, very, 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 to show how important it is. Okay, so I have done that today. So if we do not plan, a failure to plan is basically success to fail. In essence, if you do not plan, then you are planning to fail. Okay, with almost anything that you're doing. Now, I want to look at some of the steps that are involved in planning. You realize I have a symbol here, and this symbol suggests to you that planning is a cycle. Okay, we're going to sit down, we're going to plan, come up with a plan, discuss it, and then that plan, we must monitor and respond to what's going on around us. Because we could plan to do something one way, but when we get into the field and we get new data, new information based on what's happening in the field, we may have to change our plan. Okay? So let's look at some of the steps. So one of the first things we want to do in planning is to determine objectives and to do analysis. So we want to see what's needed. We want to discuss what we want to accomplish. We want to discuss what resources do we have available to us. Is what we want to do, is it feasible? Okay, is it feasible financially in terms of manpower and in terms of other resources? All of that must be discussed before we can move on. Then once we have completed our analysis, we should have a set of objectives that we want to achieve. Then we can go to write down our goal statements. The goal statements are kind of broader than the objectives. The objectives are generally things that we can take action on. Okay? If we cannot take action on it, it's not really an objective. Okay? So we write our goal statements, and in some companies, you see they would put up the goal statement, the vision statement, and all that kind of stuff, so that it would be as a reminder to staff, but it would also be a type of PR where customers and persons from outside the company who come in can see what the company is all about, what we're trying to accomplish, and so on. Okay. The third step is resource allocation. Okay. So we want to allocate resources to help us achieve our objectives. And I already mentioned personnel. Okay. We want to allocate personnel to the various tasks that are to be done. We want to delegate this task to the appropriate personnel, and we want to run competent people to be working on the various tasks. So in HR has an idea of who is qualified to do what. So HR keeps a file on every employee, and they know who is qualified to do what. Managers also monitor staff at work, and they know they should have a fair idea of the skills, the personalities and character of the staff that their subordinates, in other words, the staff that work under them. For instance, if you're supervising a unit, in the unit, you know who is generally punctual, You know who can do a job to a certain standard in your unit. You know if you want to do this particular job, and that guy is the best guy that you have in your unit. And as a supervisor, you're supposed to monitor the persons under you and be able to tell who you should give to do what. Okay. In terms of resources as well, money is also a resource. And based on the amount of money that we have to start prioritizing the tasks that have to be done. So some tasks may be given greater priority than others. In addition to that, time is also a factor in the accomplishment of this task. There are tasks that may need to be completed before we can go to other tasks. Okay? You cannot build the foundation of a house last. You have to build the foundation first and the roof last. It is not the norm to start with the roof and then go down to the foundation. So usually in distribution, the tasks that have to be done very often they follow a certain timeline. And when we are planning, we must take that timeline into consideration so we could allocate the right resources at the right time. Now, having said that, there may be resources that may be used for various phases of tasks that have to be done or various phases of a project. And you want to make sure that these resources are available when they are needed. So you don't want to have the situation where you're running several projects at your utility and all the projects are dependent on the same pieces of equipment. For instance, you're doing several excavations at different parts of the island, and you have a backhoe that you're using. You have one backhoe or one excavator, and it's needed for all of them, but you're trying to do all of them at the same time. This is not going to be the most efficient way of getting this task done. In your planning, you would schedule things so that if you start with one project, when the excavation is done there, or between the initial excavation, the work that has to be done, and a final covering where you need the backhoe or the excavator again, that excavator could probably go to another site and do something. But even then, transporting something like an excavator and that comes with us with cost. So if you're going to take it from one place to another, back and forth, that means you're increasing the cost of your operations. So these are other things that have to be taken into consideration, even at the planning stage. Because planning is not just done for big projects. Planning has to be done for smaller projects as well. If we want things to go well, we want to be efficient and effective, we must plan. We don't just get up and say, oh, I'm building a house today. It doesn't happen like that. Okay? We don't just get up and say, I'm going to extend the east portion of the distribution system today. It doesn't happen like that at all. So it has to be planned. Some of the things that may seem, well, they're unplanned. For instance, you have a brick on a main. That's not something that you've planned for. You were not expecting the brick to be in that particular place, but you have a plan for if in case you have a brick. You understand? So if we have a break, this is what we are going to do. So planning still comes in there, though you cannot predict when the break will happen. Okay? And in planning, we must also mention things like emergency plans. If there's an emergency, we have to have a plan for that. So if there's an accident somewhere, an explosion, God forbid, we have to have a plan as to what has to happen. How are we going to secure our employees? How are we going to secure our assets, our facilities, and so on? So planning is very, very critical. He who does not plan actually sets himself up for failure. So step 4, identify and assign tasks. I already discussed that, to identify and assign tasks to be done in achieving the objectives. Okay. Then we want to monitor progress and provide feedback. Okay. And you notice when we get our feedback, And based on how progress is going, we go back into step one of planning again. So we want to assess what has happened, what could we do differently, are there any issues that have come up, problems that we have to solve, and then we go back into the cycle again. Planning is not usually a one-time thing, and we say stick to the plan no matter what happens. There may be times when certain aspects of the plan needs to be changed. Do we have any questions, discussion on planning so far? Okay, so these are 5 steps. I try to squeeze it into 5 steps. Some places may give you 7 steps, but I try to put some of them together. Yes, I heard a voice.
That was mine.
Yes. Yeah.
And I realized you nicely squeezed it into the 5 steps, which I think is good. And I just want to highlight to the operators. You alluded to it and you mentioned it, but even a new project, you spoke about a broken main that wouldn't be planned. It will happen and you have to deal with it. But I want us to understand the importance as operators in the planning process, even for a new project, even for a new extension. And I think this was one of the drawbacks of the utilities in the region. They don't involve the people who have to operate and maintain the system in the planning process. So you should be up there in step one, helping shape the objectives. I want us to bear that in mind. Yeah, thanks.
Hey, that's unfortunate though, because a lot of the information, what the operators would do, the operators can inform the decisions being made by management. I know that what should be happening, what most organizations do, is you have units reporting to units reporting. So you have a system of reporting so that information actually gets to management so that they could make decisions. And that reporting starts from the operational level. So the operators will report to their supervisors. And these reports go up and up and up.
Right.
That's what's supposed to happen. So whoever is in the higher levels of management must take these things into consideration because they are not working out of a vacuum. You understand? And they are not the ones in the field, they're not on the floor, you understand? So there are things that they will not understand and they will need the input of other persons in the organization. So if they're doing things like that, it means that's a bad form of management. That's not really good management. Because it means you're going to make decisions that will not be good decisions. It will be bad decisions.
Exactly. And I think the most important point I really want to sell there, even though the organization, the way the structure is set up, you have even though because I've seen it when I started to work in Awasa, we've seen heal that and change that for the 16 years I spent there. But even though there's a divide, for example, when I walked in the early days of Nawasa, in those days it used to be Central Water Commission. You've sensed and you felt the divide between what you call new works and those who are doing the projects. You felt the divide between that and operations. It was like two entities, a left hand and a right hand that don't know what each other are doing. And the point I want to make is what my first task, because I went in and for the first time in years, I think it was maybe in history, that they brought in an engineer inside the operation and maintenance. And I started to advocate and get people to understand that their role as supervisors and the superintendents is so important. And what I want to really sell, if that is happening to you, make it your business. Make it your business to be part of it. You'll find the forum. I know you'll have your meetings. You must have a meeting with the manager or the deputy manager will be involved. Make it your business to speak out. I mean, we have volumes and books. I have recently, I mean, in water engineering, I have 2 volumes that it says operation, maintenance, design, and construction. Because it's one, it's the importance of your input is so crucial in all these new works and what is happening. Look at step 1. You have to be there to help shape the objectives, but more so when you reach step 5, when you talk about monitoring feedback. Anybody outside them more than you? Right? When you're out there and they have to pass a pipeline through a village, and you go in and repair means, and you invariable, if it's a pipeline replacement, for example, they're going to tear up the old means that are there. So you're always there. Yes, they're putting down the new one, but you always have to be there to respond to the customers, to repair the lines that are broken, and you are the ones that are going to get the best and most important feedback from the public, so you could feed back into this whole cycle. So that's the point I want to make.
Yeah, that's
very, very important.
Yeah, that's a very vital pointer. It's reminding operators that even if you are not a manager, you're still managing. Okay, because certain aspects of management you still have to practice in your job or your position as an operator. So okay, so that was planning. So another aspect of things is public relations. Now, I know that some utilities has a public relations officer, but public relations actually goes a bit further than the operator. Most of the time, the operators are the ones who get to interact with customers, because most of the time you're in the field. You get to interact with customers and with the general public. A lot of the general public will see you at work, because a lot of times your work is being done on the road. Okay, so they're gonna see you at work. Do you act professionally? Do you do whatever you're doing in a professional manner? Do you respond? How do you respond to the public when you get to interact with them? And I have a few, you're a representative of the company. I have a few questions here that we must consider. How do you handle customer complaints? Okay, that's very important. Okay, as an operator, in most instances, you should be knowledgeable about what's happening in the company. Okay, whether it's what directly happens under your supervision or what is happening in terms of the plans for the company. One of the problems we have is the water quality in most of the islands is very good. Okay, so we don't usually have water quality problems. One of our major problems might be an issue with the supply of water. Okay, and most of the time that issue with the supply of water can create customers will start to complain. They're living on the hill over there and it's a whole month since they get water. How do you handle that? What do you do when the customer comes to you? Do you listen? Listen and give appropriate feedback, make suggestions, make a record of the complaint, and then take that over to the department that can actually deal with the complaint. Because recording complaints is actually something that we should be doing. In most instances, the utility should have a form that customers can fill out and hand into the utility. Because one of the things that we have to report is the number of complaints that we receive. Remember that we are serving customers. As a utility, you're serving customers. Yeah? And so, in addition to public relations or associated with that, there is a customer care, customer relations aspect of it. You're serving the general public as well. And if you were not receiving feedback or you're not taking feedback on what you're doing, then what is your basis for improving? Okay? So there should be an outlet that allows the general public to lodge complaints so the company can see what is not right and they can fix it. Okay, okay, I see Mr. Daniel posted something. If the PR department really want to be effective, they must be picking up information from operators, assess it, and that should help shift the, yeah, that's very good. That's a very good point. It's a very good point. Gregory, yes, thanks for being here. Welcome. The session is being recorded, so you can always look at what you missed. I hope that you are doing okay. All right, so how do you handle complaints? How do you handle respond to difficult situations? Okay, do you just curse off the customer and say, you don't know what you're talking about, and I can't use the words that some might use there in this forum, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, this does not help you or the company. Okay, so you have to carry yourself a certain way. You must listen to the customer complaint. You must try to assist. In some instances, you may be able to solve the problem right there if you listen. In other instances, that issue maybe have to be carried to back to the company, and then you guys can do something about it. Because, for instance, it could be a customer could have a situation, and I have heard and seen this before, where there's a brick in a main and the water is eroding the customer's company property. The water might be causing flooding on their property and in their building and so on. And they may be very upset about it because it's costing them, it's an inconvenience. Every morning they have to go and try and sort out the water that has flooded their property, you know? So if you approach it the right way, you could actually mitigate the situation. You could actually prevent it from going further. For instance, the company approached you as an operator with a situation like that. You don't really take the person on. The person gets more upset and they say, oh, since this guy didn't listen to me, I must go to my lawyer. And then you have a lawsuit on your hands. Sometimes just the way the first person from the company deals with that individual can determine what happens next. Okay, so
Can
that's
I ask
very,
you something?
go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to use a situation that I had, and I want you to explain to me what you would have done.
Oh
I
boy.
had a customer, we have a customer that we start to miss a lot of water out of the reservoir, right? So
Mhm.
obviously there was a leak. So I went around the island and I found this 1-inch meter spinning rapidly, fast, fast, fast. I couldn't get the lady on the phone because she had her premises locked. So I turned off the meter with intent to save the water, and I called her early in the morning. And I explained the situation so that you have a leak on your compound. I say I could have left the water on and let you pay for it. But being the kind of person I am, I'm trying to save you money. You know what the lady turned to me and tell me? It's none of my damn business. I should have leave the water running. No, be that in mind, the plant had a similar, a situation where they wasn't running up to par. So we in a pandemic, so you have to try to resolve as much water as possible.
Mhm.
So I explained to her you cannot be filling up no systems. You have one system on full already. You got to be mindful they not only use others. And she went on and she turned back on the meter. So I had no choice. She didn't want to listen. I had no choice but to go lock the meter off. Where I called the boss, but she give me over social media bad write up and blah 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 blah. How would you have dealt with that situation?
Oh boy.
Be honest with you, before I turned off, although we in a situation, but we remember we in a pandemic, but we advocating to wash your hands so often, so you need water. The ideal thing should have been try and contact her before.
Okay,
You know, that would have been ideal.
pause 1
But
minute there, Mr. Daniel. This is a restaurant and a hotel guest room establishment. This is a huge
you didn't
compound.
say that.
Oh
No, no,
boy.
You didn't
that's
say
why.
that. I thought it was residential. Sorry,
No,
it's a
sorry.
different
So
situation.
no, but hear this now. The whole
It's now the
BVI
UG
closed.
irate.
All hotels are closed. She's the only one on the compound.
What she doing with that water?
Really?
This is a question was asking. I said, ma'am, you cannot. And
No,
she
well, I
went
would do. I
off.
would do.
She went off the fluke. And I
I know.
didn't really say nothing to her. I said, miss, you leave me no recourse but to lock you off.
Right. Right.
And she
Right.
called all the ministers of government. So I had
I
to
know. I
tell
know.
them.
But stand your ground. You see, if you once you know what you want to do. I mean, I went through it in the authority in the utility myself when I was there. As I said, I came in as in operational maintenance to make a difference. And there's things I had to do. I had the Prime Minister the other day call me twice. And then when I explained to him, I said, hold on, Mr. Raffit, Honorable Raffit, this is so and so. And the issue is that the sewage treatment plant have an issue, but it will always have an issue, so you have to put an overflow pipe. Somebody call him and tell him I put an overflow pipe pointing out to the harbor, like a cannon. So when he called me, and he didn't call the manager, he called me, and he called me. And I explained to him, I said, no matter what, I said, the difference is when the pumps fail, the sewage will overflow over the whole hospital compound. You say, oh, now I understand. Nobody explaining that to me. So you see, you have to have your facts and stand your ground.
No, I have an ignorant supervisor. And he called me and tell me turn back on because a white woman, turn back on the woman water. I say, listen, mister, I can't do that. Because she failed to listen to what we're saying and the plant had problems. And he started to go on with me. The same thing when you were saying last week about the bosses, them treating the workers.
Mm.
I had to tell him this morning, partner, if you want the water on Monday morning, catch a ferry and come and turn it on yourself. Because when the island shut down with water, nobody may point the finger at me. That's when the government representative likes to point.
Mm-hmm.
No, so as you say, I stand on my ground.
Right, right.
So
and
I want to know how
you don't have to be rude. You don't have to be rude. You just have to be firm, and so on.
No, I didn't disrespect anybody, but
I
had to say what I had to say,
Yep.
I was very professional as what I do, but I wanted to know how you all would have dealt with it.
No, well, in that case you're talking about it as clear cut. I really thought it was a house, a residential.
Yeah, I thought it was a residential at first.
No, but I had to also do that to residential homes, right? Who were filling systems with capacity of like 35, 40,000 gallons. Tell them you can't do that. Once the plant running, you'll be okay.
Yeah, what I think could have been done as well, since you were unable to contact the individual in question at the time, it may have been a good idea to write to the individual just as a means of documentation, indicating what was attempted and why that decision was taken. Just for future reference, it may be a good idea to have some kind of official thing sent to her from the company, indicating what the company is trying to do, what the company tried to do before having shut that off, and the reasons why it was shut off. It might be good to have some kind of, just to cover your back and the company's back.
I don't want to sound racial, but my company, them afraid of white people, but me afraid of nobody.
Yeah, well, that happens a lot.
What's right is right, what's wrong is wrong.
It happens a lot in the Caribbean, but it would be good to have documentation as to what happened. It should indicate that you tried to contact her on several occasions and you were not able to. And in an effort to, to save water, this was done. And the other things that happened, it should also state that, and this is why you all have taken that decision or that approach to that. Sometimes it's
well, I can write a report. I write in a report.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
and you can proceed with the session.
Yeah, because sometimes these people take things further than you expect. And if you have your documentation showing, indicating everything that was done, then you clear your name as compared to, not having anything in place, not having written, not having done anything. And then your right becomes your wrong.
Show your right and become wrong. Got you.
Yeah, so
okay.
As my As one of my colleagues always says, cover your back.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody Cook, I think Cook, yeah, he's saying that in Barbados, before you proceed with major connections, the marketing department would lodge a radio ad to the public with details of the works to be carried out, areas to be affected, and time frame, as we are also guided by the Fair Trading Commission. Yeah, that's actually something that um, is supposed to be done by all utilities. If you're doing any major work, you're supposed to inform the public of or those who will be affected. Now somebody's mic is in some competition, man. Okay. So this is something that all utilities are supposed to do. Okay. Especially if it's a situation where you have a planned um, project coming up, a planned project that you know will affect the general public, it will affect the supply of water or the quality of water, then you must inform the public that this will be happening. They will be shut up. Sometimes down here, the guys pass around with these vehicles with these loudspeakers, and you get somebody on the vehicle announcing that the water will be closed for whatever period of time, for whatever reason, and so on. So it's something that's supposed to be standard practice on all islands, as far as I know. I know that there are instances where the utilities are doing things and they don't necessarily inform the public that this is happening, and the public only when the public realize they don't have water, that's when the utility wants to come and say you don't have water because of this so or because of this. But it should be the opposite way, because most of the time these projects are planned ahead of time. Yeah. So if it's planned ahead of time, especially, you should inform. Even when there's a major break, the utilities, the PR people from the utility would come and say, hey, you don't have water because there's an incident that happened over there and we are trying to repair it. Your water supply should return in the next 20 hours or whatever. You understand? But it's supposed to be standard practice. Okay. So, so this is some of the things that we have to be able to do. We must also be able to deal with angry customers, which means there's a certain amount of there's certain skills that you should develop as an operator to be able to diffuse angry customers. Most times, if people are speaking and they realize you're actually giving them a listening ear, most times they would calm down. Okay, after you've heard them out, they realize you're listening and you understanding what they are saying, you're showing some level of understanding. Most times they can calm down. Okay, now I'm not telling you if you have an angry customer with a machete, I'm not telling you to go and play hero, okay? But I'm saying that in most instances where you have angry customers, if you pull them aside, listen to them, and show that you understand where they're coming from and that kind of stuff, they would calm down and it would help you to actually deal with if you had the opportunity to deal with the situation that has caused the customer to be angry. Okay. Now, the last question, can you prevent some of these? You can. Okay. One of the best forms of PR, in my opinion, is to do whatever job you're doing that interfaces with the public, whatever task you're given to do that may affect customers, is to do it well in the first instance. If it is done well, many of the complaints, many of the angry customers and so on, you won't have to deal with them. Yeah, there are some people who are extremely ignorant, and no matter what you try to do, they always find problems, but that's a small percentage of the population, hopefully. Okay? But we can prevent some of these issues if we do everything according to standard, if we are monitoring our system and responding to emergencies, accidents, and other issues quickly, we can actually prevent a lot of issues with customers. And I can use some of our electrical utilities. These companies generally tend to be doing very, very well in terms of customer service. When we have, in fact, Lucilec here in St. Lucia, anytime there's a problem, Lucilec will actually fix it rather quickly. Even after hurricane, electricity will be back up very, very quickly. So they actually work very well. They work up to a certain standard. And some of our utilities in the Caribbean are among some of the best electrical utilities around the world because of the standards that they have. So a lot of the opportunities for customers to complain, customers to get angry, and for there to arise difficult situations to arise, a lot of that is eliminated when you do your job properly. Okay, I'm not saying there won't be instances, but most of it will be eliminated if you do your job properly. Okay, so let's look at maintenance. Talking about doing your job properly, maintenance, how maintenance is done usually affects the continued operation of the utility. Okay, we have different pieces of equipment that with the manufacturer suggests that it should be maintained annually or monthly or weekly, whatever the manufacturer suggests. If we are following these things, then our system would have less breakdowns and it would continue to function well over longer periods of time. Yes, Ezekiel. Yeah, from the periodic before which that's a good statement. Somebody came in earlier and I didn't say, Kelvin, welcome. Okay, so let's look at maintenance, and we look at two different types of maintenance. We're going to start with corrective maintenance. Corrective maintenance basically involves, it's fix it when it's broken. Okay, that's that kind of maintenance. So it's something we only do when there's a problem. So we have a break in a main, corrective maintenance is carried out. We have a valve that's not working properly, corrective maintenance. And corrective maintenance could be either repairing the piece of equipment or replacing it. Okay, in many instances, we actually have to replace, for instance, pipes. Pipes get broken, and in many instances, we just replace the entire length of pipe. Okay, especially if it's deep underground, we may not want to deal with another break in that pipe, so we just change the pipe. Okay, so, and when you think of it, you can see that that can be costly. It's generally, well, it's unplanned. We can't plan. We don't expect breaks. Well, we expect breaks, but we don't know when and how they will happen. Repairs take time and resources. That should be from operators. So it requires personnel to be spending time on it, and it may require more equipment. It may require money as well. So that's corrective maintenance, fix when broken. Then we have preventive maintenance. Okay, this is regular scheduled maintenance. Okay, for instance, we have things like valves, we have hydrants, we have pumps. All of these things. Then we in our system we may have sensors, actuators. All of these things have to be maintained on a regular basis. It may mean things have to be lubricated. It may mean certain parts in them, they have a certain lifespan and we have to change them every year or something along those lines. But maintenance, preventive maintenance is very important. Preventive maintenance can, when it's planned, okay, for most pieces of equipment, we have a maintenance card. We have a maintenance card that we keep showing the last date that was maintained, what was done. Okay, so we are keeping track of what's happening in terms of these pieces of equipment. Okay, and we also may have the next date for us to do maintenance on that piece of equipment as well. So when we do preventive maintenance, it will lead to fewer breakdowns and cost savings. Okay, because if you are maintaining a piece of equipment, look at your vehicles. We have vehicles in the utilities. Okay, many times we have quite a few pickups, we have trucks, we have tractor, no, not tractors, we have excavators, we have backhoes. Okay, all of these have to be maintained. We have to change oil, we have to change oil filters, air filters, fuel filters, and these things have to be changed at a certain period of time, or we could risk losing the engine on the vehicle. One, two, which is milder, the vehicles begin to operate less efficiently as they approach the time that they need to be serviced. And that can increase costs because as they work less efficiently, it means that fuel consumption is going to go up and so on. So all of these things, and that is a form of preventive maintenance that must be done to preserve to lengthen rather, the life of the various pieces of equipment that we have in the distribution system. Do we have any questions? Okay, so we have two types of maintenance that we usually look at: corrective and preventive. If no questions, I'll continue. Okay, record keeping. So why would we want to keep proper records? Okay, there are several reasons I can present to you. There may be more. Okay, there are legal requirements for some records, especially financial records. The legal requirements, the records have to be kept over a certain period of time. There are also legal requirements for engineering records at the utility. Okay, and based on where you are, there might be different requirements in terms of the length of time. Some places might have 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years for records to be kept at the utility. Okay, so it varies. Then we have regulatory requirements, so Safe Drinking Water Act and other pieces of legislation that may govern the activities of the utility. Okay, they may require us to keep certain types of records, and we'll look at some of them in a bit. Okay, efficiency, that's another reason to keep records. Remember that when we keep records, it means we have data that we can look at to improve our performance as a utility. Okay, budgeting and planning. So what happens in one year generally informs what happens in the upcoming year. Okay, we can look at, for instance, the amount of growth in terms of water usage in 2019. Okay, that could be an indicator of how much growth we can expect in 2020. As a matter of fact, we may have records going back 10 or 20 years, and we can compare water usage over that period of time and see how it has increased over the years and be able to predict and project for the future. That will also inform us of, for instance, whether we need to expand our distribution system, expand in terms of storage, expand in terms of the amount of water that we are treating, and so on. Okay, make improvements in system, I already mentioned that. Emergencies, okay, you must keep records for emergencies as well. In emergencies, you don't want to be guessing things. You want to get hard data and just make a decision based on that hard data. Okay? And for reports, so you keep records so that you can come now, look at what's in the records, and create the necessary reports. So for instance, one of the reports that you would have gone through on the Kawaso online thing is the consumer confidence reports. If you do not keep records, it is quite difficult for you to come up with a consumer confidence report, because what are you going to put in there if you don't have records? Are you going to just guess figures and do something to make the company look nice, even if it's not true? Okay, so, all right, so some records that must be kept: operations and maintenance records, chemical inventory and usage. Again, for chemical inventory and usage, you could see how that can inform budgeting and planning. Because if we know how much we use, for instance, over a period of a month, then we can plan for the next month. Or in our budget for 2020, we can look at how much money we spent on chemicals for the previous year and use that figure to help us estimate how much money we should allocate towards that in the next year. Pumping records. Pumping records are very important. Here, if we're using groundwater, these can inform us of certain particular things that we have to do in terms of maintenance in the groundwater system. Okay. Purchases, sampling and analysis. Complaints. Realize that I have complaints there. So we should be keeping records of complaints. And it's important because when we keep the record, we can go back and see whether these problems have been solved. Then over the period of months or over a period of a year, you can see what complaints reoccur. For instance, if there's a place in your distribution system where people are experiencing water quality problems, say the people are complaining that the water tastes stale, okay, in that area, and you took certain actions, and then a couple months later, people are still complaining, it means that the actions that you took were not effective. Okay, so that's a way that we could use these recorded complaints. And we should have a form, a complaint form, so that the public can lodge complaints, they can be recorded, and they can be assessed and dealt with. Accidents, we must keep records of accidents. There might be legal reasons why we should keep records. Some people, something will happen, and they may try to be facetious and try to get money from the organization, from the company. Okay, and if proper records are kept of what happened, that prevents the person from making their own story as to what happened. Records on personnel, who was working where, at what time, doing what was their position, what was their responsibilities, and so on. Cross-connection control, another important area. Okay, what did we do? What was installed? What method did we use to prevent cross-connection? What date was it done? In what location? So that the next person coming to look at this can look. It also has implications for if there's a situation where we have a cross-connection problem that leads to death, or that leads to some kind of epidemic. When stuff is being reviewed, this record would be reviewed, would be looked at, okay, to see whether the company was at fault or whether the company did everything that was legally required and everything that was required by the Safe Drinking Water Act in order to ensure good water quality. Okay, water main disinfection. Okay, we must keep a record How much chlorine did we add? What did we do? What methods did we use? Usually, institutions have forms or cards that the operators would record these things on, and then it would be filed away. Okay, any questions so far? No? Okay. So some of these reports that I'm going to mention here, some of them are annual, some are quarterly, some are monthly reports. On the Kawaso Online site, there is actually a document, I think an image that comes up first and looks at some of these reports when they're required, what is annual, what has to happen in terms of emergencies and so on. And I'm going to look at them a bit, I want to look at the idea of having these tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 and so on. So quantity of water supplied, flow rates of water supplied, maximum daily flows, monthly average flows, water quality. Okay, we have to have a report on that. Complaints again. Okay, system failures. Okay, so let me just go back. So these are some of the reports that we have in the utility. You could add consumer. You could add the consumer report mentioned in the Kawaso Online here as well. It could be something that's done annually, consumer confidence reports. Okay. So notifications, this is where we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Now, the way I look at that, I'm not sure if some of you watch basketball or tennis or netball, these games that are usually on some kind of court, and then you have seating around the court. Sometimes you have it for indoor football as well. And you have the seats as they go away from the court, they get higher and higher. At tier 1, now we usually refer to that as tiered seating. Okay, so the first one here, tier 1, is closest to the distribution system. Okay, so tier 1 usually requires some kind of immediate notification to the public. So that's where we have an emergency, we have some issue with our water quality, and we need to inform the public that they, for instance, after a storm, we would send out one of these notifications informing the public that they need to boil their water, okay? Because we cannot ensure the effectiveness of disinfection because we have so many bricks in our distribution system, okay? So in terms of, so this is going to be almost immediate, and this might be, if it happens, then this will tend to be more frequent. Then tier 2 will be less frequent, tier 3 will be even less. Tier 3 might be things that we have to do, notifications that we have to put out annually, like the consumer confidence reports. Okay, so that's the idea behind this tier system. Okay, as we go further away, the notification is less serious. Okay, so the closer we are to the court, the more serious it is. Okay, any questions yet? No? So let me look at budgeting. I believe that's the last item I'm going to look at. So budgeting, and I'm not sure most persons should know what budgeting is. Most of us in our daily lives, we plan for how we're going to use our money. And so a budget is essentially a plan for the expenditure of the money that we have coming in. Okay, sorry, I went back. Okay. So our budget includes fixed costs, and fixed costs are these are costs that do not generally change over a period of time. So we know what they're going to be, okay, beforehand. So things like taxes, okay, whether it's property taxes or otherwise, taxes are generally stay the same. because they are a percentage. For instance, we know that what VAT is in our country. If it's 12.5, if it's 15, if it's 8%, we know and it's constant unless Parliament meets. There's a meeting of Parliament and they make a decision to change it. It stays the same. Okay, insurance of our buildings, our vehicles, that's kind of considered a fixed cost. It does not vary over a period of time, except with some insurance, for instance, of vehicles. As the vehicles depreciate, the value, the amount you pay in insurance may go down, okay, but it's generally fixed. Heating and lighting, okay, that does not always apply to everywhere because while some places may pay a fixed cost for that, in the Caribbean region, we actually pay based on usage. So we don't just pay a connection fee. Okay, then we have variable costs. These are costs that tend to change and tend to be unpredictable. The cost of chemicals, because the amount of chemicals we use will vary at different periods of time. Repairs, something that we cannot plan for. Okay, then items to be considered in the budget. Labor, we have to put a cost to labor because we have to pay people, and some of that labor may be contractual labor. It might be people we contract to do things. For instance, in most instances, when there's a repair that requires us to break up the road, the utility would subcontract a third party to do the road repair because the utility does not necessarily specialize in that. Okay. Then the cost of repairs. Okay, and these figures, many of these figures are actually, we use the previous year's figures to come up with them. Okay. Materials, equipment, and some of that note on equipment may include equipment that is rented from third parties. Okay. Sometimes we don't have, a utility may not have excavators or backhoes, and you may need to rent one to use. The utility may also need things like forklifts. Sometimes you may end up renting certain types of pumps if the utility does not own it, but it's needed, or what the utility has breaks down. Even equipment like projectors, I have seen instances where the utility may only have one projector, and then you have several things happening, and sometimes they rent things like projectors from third parties as well. And then you have miscellaneous expenses. These are things that are not always present. They do not always need to be taken care of, but based on the situation, you may need to spend money on it. So these are the items that we consider when we are budgeting. Okay, and two important accounting terms. I mentioned assets earlier, assets and liabilities. Assets are things owned by the company. For instance, buildings, land, cash, equipment, accounts receivables. In other words, these are accounts where people are paying to us. So that's money that's coming to us. So these are assets. Liabilities are things the company owes. Okay, so debts, expenses, various costs involved in daily operations. Okay, these are liabilities. So you can look at it another way. Things that bring in money are assets, things that take away money are liabilities. Okay, at the end of each financial year, we would like our assets to be greater than our liabilities. If our assets are greater than our liabilities, then we're running in the black, as they say, or we are running at a profit. We are running profitably. If liabilities are greater than assets, we're in the red. We're running at a loss. So we try to avoid liabilities being greater than assets. Okay. especially when it comes to liquidity in terms of cash. We want to know that at the end of the year, we have cash left over and we have not spent all the income that we have coming into the company. We have not spent it on liabilities. Okay? Because one of the things that has to be done, in addition to taking care of the operational needs of the company, we should also be able to take care of future plans, capital investments. We should also have money that is being saved towards things like that. Anybody who operates a business has to put money aside to cater for expansion of the business or growth of the business. If you're not doing that, your business will eventually fail because you actually limiting what you can do if you are not putting monies aside for things like expansions, for these planned expansions of the business. Okay. And do we have any questions? That's it for my presentation. If we have any questions, I can take them now, or we can take them now. Okay, I'm going to stop the sharing. Okay, and then we can talk if we have questions, discussions. Okay, so we have no questions or nobody's hearing what I'm saying?
Hearing what you're saying. And I think you've been very concise and so on. Don't make sense complicating the matters, especially at this level. I think the level of information is good.
Okay. Great. Okay, somebody's asking, was this the last class?
No, that's the 11th class. And based on the schedule, it's supposed to be 11 classes.
It's supposed to be
Mm.
our last live class.
Mm-hmm.
However, we will notice that there's a quiz, a review quiz that that is placed there, I think, for the next week. So it's not that we are going to abandon you. We're just not going to have, well, I don't foresee another live class happening, but we are going to continue to support you. We still have the forum that you can use. We still have the WhatsApp group as well. So if, as you're doing your review, you come up with the issues that arise, then we are still here to answer these questions and to respond to your concerns. Okay. We may do a live class next week. I'm not sure. Just to wrap up.
Yeah.
That's if you have concerns, questions, and things that you want us to deal with. So here's what we can do. If, as you do your review, as you continue to look at things, if there are areas you would like us to look at again, post these areas in the WhatsApp group. Okay? So then we can take a note, and next Saturday we can have a session where we are just looking at the areas that you may have particular difficulties with. Okay? Can we agree to that?
I support that, and I give it my commitment to lead part of it, be part of it. And I think somebody alluded to the fact that they posted some general questions on the website already. Some issues, some areas they wanted a review.
Ezekiel, I think, posted.
Yeah. So we will look at that in general. Again, I want to encourage you to send in the calculations on chlorination and so on, and also this last quiz. So let's have them in time so it could be meaningful. I, for one, love to go through every one by one and see the different errors, different doubts that each student will have. And as you know, I post individually on the comments. So if you do that in time and we go through everything, I will share some of the, without singling out anybody and calling the names, I will share some of the common doubts, walk the problems through, point out where you should be mindful and be careful of, and it will be in the interest of everybody.
Okay,
so sending everything in for me, and then Alvin, we will get together and structure it as we see fit.
I'm also wishing we could get that information by Thursday. Is Thursday too late?
Yeah.
So if we could get all that information by Thursday so that we could prepare for our Saturday class. Planning again.
I'll do my best. I still got some catching up to do.
Okay, as I
yeah, don't be afraid to, in your catching up, things that you didn't catch. Tell us up front so we could spend a little time with you and and go through it. It will be for the furtherance of the knowledge of everybody. You know.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
So wonderful. If we have no more questions, then I leave that with you. The recording, I'm going to put up the recording in a bit as soon as it's finished processing. I'm going to put up the presentation that I used for this class. I'm also going to put up this today. I didn't end up putting it up before class, but I'm going to put it up as soon as we're done. So you'll have access to it.
I'm laughing at the chat again.
Yeah, that's what I'm laughing at as well.
Wait.
Anyway.
Somebody asking what the exam date.
The exam date. I am not sure, you know.
Yeah.
I know one thing was discussed, but because of the current situation, new decisions have to be made as to when the exam will be administered.
Remember, the whole world is affected by
So
COVID. What
we can do is we can have a discussion with Mr. Jha during the week, and then by next week we can have him come, or we can share that information with you, what the plan is moving forward. Okay?
Perhaps. Great.
So if there are no questions, no discussion,
we expect information in the next few days. And
we want the information by no later than Thursday. So it requires you to be going through material. Okay, now even if we say no later than Thursday, if after we do the stuff on Saturday, you still have questions after that, you can still contact us through the WhatsApp group or through the Kawasa Online forum. Okay? But try to assess what you need help with now so that we can deal with it next Saturday. Kevin, I am not sure that the exam will be done online. That has not been discussed. I know that they were doing paper-based exams before. I am not certain whether Kawasa has the facilities for the online exam, but we can find out and we can get back to you next Saturday.
Yeah.
Or even in the WhatsApp group if we get before then. It would be nice to have Mr. Jha come in for a few and just speak to that at our next session. It would be nice if you were there to speak to it.
Yep. I know some discussions are on the way to have it online already.
Yeah.
Didn't quite crack it yet with the ABC and so on, but I think it's incumbent on everybody now to push it, given the state of affairs internationally.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
That would be good. They have facilities to actually do that easily, and it can control the device that you're doing the step on to prevent any form of cheating or what have you.
Yep. All right.
Yep. So goodbye. All the best. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Be safe. And we'll talk.
And
Thanks.
see you guys.